From the NASDAQ stock market here in Times Square, I'm your host, Josh Matches, and today my very special guest is Carlos Gil, the author of this incredible new book, The End of Marketing. Carlos, thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be here with you, Josh, as always.
So, Carlos, why did you write The End of Marketing?
You know, after spending a career that spans 10 years working in corporate marketing, working for brands like Winn-Dixie and LinkedIn and BMC Software, now running my own business, I realized that marketing, and specifically social media marketing, it's misunderstood and it's fragmented. Let's face it, you have more options than ever before. Social media, as I describe in the end of marketing, is this noisy digital ocean. And I've learned methodologies and strategies throughout the years of my career to help brands, which I document quite a bit in the book, to help brands really stand out and rise above the digital noise.
So The End of Marketing is quite a provocative title. Why did you call it The End of Marketing?
Such a good question. Let's face it, marketing today has so many meanings. It's not just about sales and advertising, but it's communications, it's public relations. In some cases, it's even crisis communications, employee advocacy. It means so many things. What brands really need to know is that marketing today is not just linear. There is no linear path to purchase. What brands really need to focus on is, first of all, use all this data that exists on the internet and social media to listen and really pay attention to what's being said about their brand, even what's being said about their competition. I have this term that I coined called digital savage in the book, where if brands want to really stand out, they need to develop a personality. Examples like Wendy's. There's other brands that are really using social media not just to listen really well, but to engage and even in some cases infringe on the customers or followers of other brands. And look, this is the new way of marketing today. People don't want to be sold to, they want to be engaged. And really successful brands today have figured out that if you take what works for influencers and you start sprinkling that magic on your own employees and you turn your employees into advocates, now you have hundreds, or in some cases thousands of people advocating for you, and not just one or two brand channels that appear to just be serving ads all day.
So Carlos, let's dive into some of the advice that you give specifically for kind of brands. For a big brand like NASDAQ, what would be some of your recommendations to have a more authentic human voice like you talk about in the book?
The reality is this: most people don't go on social media to be sold to. They go to social media to engage with friends. They go to social media to see content from what their favorite celebrities are posting. So I use examples in the book of DJ Khaled and Kim Kardashian, notable celebrities, and what I explain throughout the book to readers is that you need to become the own celebrity of your industry. And look, we're in a studio right here. We're creating original content. We're creating content that gives value. You know, there's an educational component, there's an entertainment component to it. Brands can do the same exact thing. The beauty of social media today in the year 2020 is that we all have access to the same tools and same technologies. It's up to whether you're a small business owner or an enterprise marketer, it's up to you ultimately to use them.
And one other thing that I found really interesting in the book is you mentioned kind of Adobe and their network of influencers. Talk about how a brand like Adobe is kind of channeling the value of these social media influencers to open their brand to new audiences.
I'm so glad that you bring Adobe up, because I've had an opportunity to work with Adobe as part of their Adobe Insiders influencer program, and I have, as I share openly throughout the marketing, a love-hate relationship with influencer marketing, because I feel that in some cases influencer marketing is highly ineffective. And the reason why it's highly ineffective is because brands pay an influencer to promote them, and while that campaign is running, the brand sees a spike in engagement on social media. And as soon as that campaign ends and the influencer goes away, then all of a sudden that spike goes right back down. And it's like putting a Band-Aid on a very real problem, which is how do you get engagement? And what Adobe has done is genius. They've gone out and recruited about 50 various business influencers, including myself. We all come from different walks of life. There's diversity throughout our Adobe Insiders program, and they invite us to go to conferences put on by Adobe. They invited us earlier this year to go to Ad Week here in New York and just operate as ambassadors for the company. Very little guardrails, and they just let us do what we already do under the premise that we are a group, we're a conglomerate, if you will, of influencers. And I think what companies need to really do going forward is follow the Adobe model of identify who is really influential in your industry, not just someone that you're gonna pay a check to come promote you, but really who has influence, and foster and build relationships with them.
Yeah, and I think influencers that you can also respect and trust. I think they were very smart about that, and it's a great piece of advice for any brand that's watching to think about a way to harness an audience that you do give kind of low guardrails to, and you haven't kind of put them in a box of only doing this like one-dimensional promotion. So how about in terms of employee advocacy? You mentioned that, and I think it's something that not many brands do well enough. What are some of the best tools for employee advocacy?
You know, there's before we get into tools, let's talk about why companies should activate their employees. Employees are an organization's greatest asset, whether you're a startup or whether you're an enterprise brand or whether you're NASDAQ. Your employees are the heart and soul of your company. And the reality is that employees have reach. And I say this, whether it's in keynotes that I do all over the world or whether it's in the book and the marketing, every single person on social media today, every single person has influence, whether you have 5 followers or 5,000 or 500,000. And the reality is that people today are gravitating to what their friends are posting. They're being influenced by what their friends are posting, not what brands post. So brands struggle with staying relevant and with gaining reach. And if you can find ways to activate the people within your organization that you're already paying a salary to and give them the right tools and the right messaging as well to promote your brand, now you're going to be able to actually cut through the noise because people are still going to be speaking about your brand without necessarily promoting goods, products, and services. Now, going back to tools, one of my favorite tools is Dynamic Signal. I've used them at other organizations I've worked at. They're a fantastic social media management tool specifically for employee advocacy and even internal comms. Another one, Sprinkler. At various jobs where I worked at in the past, I've had an opportunity to use Sprinkler's platform, not just for social listening and monitoring and engagement, but also specifically for employee advocacy. And what I say to clients that I work with now as an agency owner is ensure that you have a streamlined process. That's the easiest way to get your employees engaged. If I say to you, hey Josh, here's a mobile app that you just download on your iPhone, and as soon as you log in, there's a stream of content, and it's up to you to select when you want to share it, where you want to share it to, now making your job easier.
Absolutely, and I think that's what it's about. It's about making it easy for employees to share that employer content and have it be interesting content that they actually want to share. And so shifting gears a little bit, the book isn't just for brands, it's also for individuals looking to grow their personal brands. What's some of the advice that you give for individuals in terms of growing their personal brands? I know you've done it from LinkedIn to Snapchat to Facebook and so on. What are some of your core fundamentals of advice for someone who maybe aspires to be an influencer?
Such a good question. And first, I was sharing this with you off camera. Writing a book is challenging because you want the book to appeal to multiple audiences. So I knew when I sat down and wrote down the marketing, I wanted this book to resonate with a startup founder. I wanted this book to resonate with a C-suite executive and really everyone in between. And personal branding is such a big component of sales and marketing today because let's face it, people do business with who they feel comfortable doing business with. And this isn't new by any means. But I use this term throughout the book, old school rules with new school tools. So the premise of building a business is through relationship building. You and I, we've met over the years and we've stayed in touch and we've built a relationship, and that is how business is done. So fast forward to where we're at today, where it's hard to stand out on the internet. It's noisy. You have platforms like Facebook that have over 2 billion users, Instagram over 1 billion. You have TikTok, right, that's really hot right now, and it's taking people's attention away. So the number one piece of advice I'd give to anyone that's looking to grow a personal brand today is be strategic. And what I mean by being strategic is you don't need to be on every single social network. You were asking me on the elevator here what I think about TikTok. My audience isn't there, so I'm not on TikTok. But instead I'm focusing my time on LinkedIn, YouTube, because I know I can get more reach for my time and effort that I put on these platforms. So again, be strategic, but also be human. People relate to people, not products, not goods, not services. So open yourself up. Use platforms like Instagram Stories, Snapchat you mentioned before. Use these mediums to really give an inner glimpse of what it is that you do, and more importantly, who you are. And don't forget, the most critical piece of all of this is you have to socialize. The key word in social media is social. You need to engage. And if you're not using these mediums to have real conversations, then you're missing the boat. And quite frankly, you're just contributing to the digital noise that already exists. And that digital noise is going to continue to get louder and louder.
Yeah, and I would say I think a lot of your magic it's just that it's not all online. A lot of it is offline, and part of that humanity is kind of connecting with people one-to-one as well as one-to-many online. How do you kind of scale that human experience?
Such a good question. It's by getting to know your audience. And there's this misconception that in order to be successful on social media, you need to have the biggest audience, and that's false. What you really need to have is the most qualified and quality audience. For example, I don't have this massive following with millions of followers, but if you look at my LinkedIn, my Instagram, it's a quality following. These are individuals that
Highly engaged.
are highly engaged. They're in the business space like myself. I've met them at conferences, meetups, and what have you. And when someone meets me today and they ask me for my business card, I say, hit me up on Instagram. That is my business card. Because on Instagram, you can get to know me personally, but you can also see what I do professionally, and there's value in that.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of value in that kind of following someone's Instagram story and starting to feel like they're a real person, not just the kind of person you know on the internet. I think it is a way to make people feel a little bit closer to you. So one more question around the book. You know, you wrote a lot of really interesting things that I think are very true today. Did you think about, you know, how true will some of these things be in the future? Because we're in such a fast-moving industry.
Absolutely. So a book should be timeless. And 20 years from now, someone should be able to pick up the end of marketing. This should still serve as a guide for college students or executives, because the reality is that as long as we're here and humans exist, there will always be a need for humanizing your brand. Again, that's not necessarily a new concept. It's just applying the concept of relationship building and going much deeper with relationship building online and the internet. So to answer your question, I write quite a bit about what the future entails. And part of that is AI, or artificial intelligence. It's using bots. It's really replacing marketers' menial tasks with artificial intelligence. And the reason why, as you read the book, I start talking about what's forthcoming is because in order to future-proof your business and your brand, right now you really need to start focusing on the human element, and that means listening, engaging, and spotlighting the faces of your organization. Even if you're just, you know, 1 or 2 man startup, spotlighting your stories is highly critical, because I tell you what, once we start having AI disrupt marketing, the gloves are off. It's going to start removing the human element, including emotion, from marketing altogether.
All right, last question. As we move into a new decade in 2020, what's the number one marketing skill that you think that people will need in this new decade to succeed?
Such a good question, Josh. The ability to speak into a phone. I can't tell you how many marketers I've met at conferences or just in my own personal circles that when you give, and they're really highly intelligent, when you give them a phone and ask them to speak into it, they don't know what to say, where to start, or what to do. And it's such a critical skill set to be able to dominate this little 5.5-inch screen and be able to captivate people's attention. We see it happen with influencers. For as much as I write throughout the book that I think influencer marketing really is ineffective for brands, I give kudos, significant kudos to influencers, because what they do is a form of art. It's theater. And if you can just take 1 or 2 little nuggets from the biggest influencers today, and if you see what they really do at the end of the day really well, is they draw the attention of their audience and they captivate their audience's attention. If you can do that as a marketer, regardless of how many fans or followers you have today, you'll win in this game long term.
Amazing. Carlos, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to everyone for tuning in. If you want a copy of The End of Marketing, head over to Amazon.com and pick up your copy today. Thanks so much for tuning in.